Good evening. Welcome everyone to the 17th Judicial Circuit and Broward County Bar Association and the TJ Reddick Bar Association's celebration of Black History Month 2021. To stem the tide of misinformation and miseducation of and about African Americans in the nation's historical curriculum, historian Carter G. Woodson founded the first Negro History Month in 1926. In 1976, President Ford extended the observation to a full month, where our nation acknowledges and celebrates those lost voices. Americans of African descent, many overlooked by mainstream historians, all of whom have contributed to the rich tapestry of our uniquely American history, culture, past, and future. It is an inescapable truth that as a society, unless we recognize the past contributions of each of us, we cannot, as a society, chart a shared future for all of us. Today, as we fix our gaze on the light at the end of this dark tunnel of a year-long global pandemic, let us take a moment to remember those we have lost. Let us take a moment to celebrate those who have served us as frontline warriors against COVID. In particular, and in light of the disproportionate impact that COVID-19 has had on Black and Brown communities across the country, we wish to acknowledge and thank our medical professionals who have given so much, sacrificed so much, and helped so many. Today, in their honor and in observation of Black History Month 2021, we celebrate and acknowledge some medical pioneers in the Black community, pioneers whose example of service have inspired so many of today's frontline warriors. Please join us as the 17th Judicial Circuit and the Broward County Bar Association and the TJ Reddick Bar Association salutes our frontline medical professionals in honoring our Black pioneers and celebrating today's heroes. I am so excited as the president of the BCBA to announce that in the spirit of celebrating our past while looking to the future, we have some very special young guests with us today from Broward College, and specifically from the BCBA Broward College Ignite Your Passion program. The Ignite Your Passion series, the brainchild of our very own BCBA Executive Board member, Allison Smith, offers Broward College students the opportunity to hear from and share with people of different backgrounds in our society, from attorneys to doctors to tech entrepreneurs and beyond on a monthly basis. This month, we are honored to have these bright young students here with us as our special guests. So please give them a rousing 17th BCBA TJ Reddick welcome to our celebration of Black History Month. And of course, we cannot bring these programs to you folks without our partners and our sponsors. And to do the honors, allow me to introduce someone who needs no introduction, our very own Executive Director, Mr. Braulio Rosa. Braulio.
Thank you, President Vaughn. I appreciate it. I'm humbled. As President Vaughn said, we couldn't do this without the wonderful sponsors that we have. So let me recognize them. Halitzer Pettis-Schwam, Kelly Cronenberg, Cohen Blostein Ayala, Laura Shikoma, the Foreman family, McKinnon Legal, Schutz, King Lindsay, Kim Von Lerner, Lorna Brown Burton, and the law offices of Nathaniel Green. These have been fantastic sponsors who have supported us for years. I call them, they don't blink. They immediately say, okay, how much you want me to write this check for? They're fabulous people who support us. So thank you so much to you all. We are grateful. And Lauren, play the, there's a couple 20-second videos from some of our platinum sponsors.
I am Eugene Pettis, co-founder of Halloxer Pettis and Schwab. My firm and I are proud sponsors of the Broward County Bar Association's Black History Month celebration, a salute to frontline medical professionals. This event is especially meaningful to me as a native of Fort Lauderdale and a product of the community of all of our honorees. Thank you for joining us today in honoring these pioneers and celebrating today's heroes.
On behalf of Cohen, Blaustein, and Ayala, it's our pleasure to be a sponsor during Black History Month of the Broward County Bar's efforts to recognize the medical professionals who were pioneers here in Broward County. In their name, in their honor, and to their families, congratulations. And thank you, Broward County Bar.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Mr. President.
We have a jam-packed evening for you this evening. And as they say, information is power, and you will all feel so much more powerful after this evening's offerings. But to set the tone, to start us off right, please allow me to invite to the screen Reverend Ricky Scott, the senior pastor of the New Hope Baptist Church, to lead us off with this evening's invocation. Reverend Scott.
Let us pray. Spirit of the living God, we've gathered in this virtual gathering tonight to allow your spirit to fill our very being. Most gracious and loving God, we remember the struggle of our people, Black people, people of African descent, your people, and thank you, God, for your grace, your love, and your mercy. We thank you for leaders tonight that you continue to place in high places, in ordinary places, and inspire each of us, eternal God, to work more faithfully for justice and dignity of life everywhere. Lord God, remember the hurts of exclusions and prejudice, but we know that you can raise our vision above our barriers and give us wisdom and courage to make this a better world. As you give us, eternal God, yourself and the bread of hope and the cup of mercy, show us tonight, eternal God, how to give ourselves to those who are without hope and to those who cry for mercy. Lord God, rule over our spirit in this hour, that we will go from this place and understand the freedom of those who trust in you. We ask all of these things in the one who said, let there be light. We praise you tonight. It's in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Those words carry real meaning, and we appreciate you for it. Folks, I've got to tell you that this was close. This one was very close. And it was a toss-up as to who was going to lead us in the Negro National Anthem. And there's one amongst us whose name rhymes with Mac Luder, but I'm just not going to say it, who was a close contender. But being the gentleman that he is, he kind of decided to give way and step back and allow Judge Jackie Powell to lead us in the Negro National Anthem. Judge Powell.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies liberty, and let all rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, and yet with a steady beat have not a weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed.
I don't care if this is Zoom. Unmute and give that a clap it deserves.
Nice job, Jackie. Nice job, Jackie.
Awesome.
Very good job, Judge.
Good job, Judge Powell.
Beautiful.
It was awesome.
Okay, mute them down
You are a rock star.
before somebody gets into trouble with that exuberance. Thank you, Judge Powell. You know, there is a movement to lift that song in terms of its national significance. At the very minimum, it should be required reading at the very minimum. Thanks again, Judge Powell. Please allow us to welcome, as is our tradition for so many of our Broward County Bar Association and 17th Judicial Circuit and TJ Reddick programs, our very own Clerk of the Court, Ms. Brenda D. Foreman, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, everyone. There's quite a few judges that have their flags behind them or with them on the side of them. So could we, if you can, stand and say the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now, folks, I was going to allow this to roll, but I think each of these individuals who are going to bid us welcome deserve their introduction, so I will make it quick. They all acknowledge the significance of today's events. They're going to bid us welcome, share a few words with us. Please forgive them if it's brief, but they're doing that to make sure that we can share in the amazing programming that we have lined up for you. Please welcome our very own Chief Judge, the Honorable Jack Tudor, Chief of the 17th Judicial Circuit. Judge Tudor.
Thank you very much there, President Vaughn, and welcome everybody this evening to our celebration of Black History here in the 17th Judicial Circuit. I want to welcome all of our guests who may not be part of the 17th Circuit. I saw Mayor Geller, I saw Judge Trawick and others from other areas of the state that are with us tonight. So I welcome all of you. I particularly welcome all of our Black judges who we are recognizing and honoring today for their diversity to the 17th Judicial Circuit. When we started planning this was all the way back maybe in October of last year. We're kind of in the middle of the pandemic, or we hope we were getting towards the end of the pandemic, but it didn't turn out that way. We thought, since we did something related to the law every year and legal pioneers, it would be nice to see what healthcare was like for Black citizens. And I want to particularly recognize and thank Judge Robinson and Ashley Gant, Robert, and others who went over to the library, found the history on much of this, found the individuals or their family members who were associated with this. I just as a citizen can't imagine what healthcare was like for Black citizens in Broward County 60 years ago. So we're going to find out a little bit of that tonight. And our intent really is to recognize all of the first responders who've been working through this COVID crisis and making our community safer and better. So on behalf of everybody here in the 17th, Kathy Pugh, who helped put this together, and Braulio and his team, Robert, I thank all of you all for all of the behind the scenes work to make the program successful, to the sponsors who wrote a check to Braulio, which is always important. I welcome everybody on behalf of the 17th, and I think you're going to find this a very interesting program. Thank you there, Robert.
Thank you so much, Chief. I think the members of the committee will join me in acknowledging that, you know, as Judge Robinson was the engine behind this wonderful program, you were the transmission, and both of you made it go. So thank you very much for all that you're doing and all that you've done. Folks, please allow me to welcome to the screen our very own mayor, a lawyer himself, Mayor Steve Geller, to bring us some welcoming words on behalf of the commission and the county government. Mayor Geller, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President. And when Judge Tudor said that I was not part of the 17th Circuit, that surprised me since I've been practicing law for 39 years, and all of them here in Broward. So good evening, I'm Broward County Mayor Steve Geller. I'd like to thank the 17th Judicial Circuit, the Broward County Bar Association, and the TJ Reddick Bar Association for inviting me to join tonight's program, Black History Month, a salute to frontline medical professionals, in order to recognize the contributions of Broward County's Black doctor pioneers, Broward's Provident Hospital, and of our current Black doctors and frontline medical personnel. Specifically, we recognize and honor the contributions of Broward County's pioneer Black doctors, including Dr. Von D. Mizell, Dr. James Franklin Sistrunk, Dr. J.O. Bass, Dr. William Alexander Morris, and Dr. Calvin H. Shirley. Each of these doctors were active in the civil rights movement and paved the way for generations of future Black doctors and medical professionals. I'm going to tell you a little about these pioneering doctors. Due to segregation, Blacks weren't allowed to be treated at Broward County's Broward General Hospitals, nor were Black doctors allowed to practice at Broward General. Therefore, Dr. Mizell and Dr. Sistrunk co-founded Provident Hospital, which provided hospital privileges to Black doctors and a place to treat Broward's Black residents. Dr. Mizell also started the first NAACP chapter in South Florida, and the Dr. Von D. Mizell Eula Johnson State Park is named in honor of his efforts. Dr. Sistrunk practiced medicine for 44 years in Broward County, and Sistrunk Boulevard is named after him. Dr. Bass practiced for more than 40 years and was an extremely well-known family physician in Fort Lauderdale. In 1982, he was appointed to the Florida Board of Medicine. Dr. Calvin Shirley and his wife established a county health department branch in Broward County's Black community. And Dr. William Alexander Morris, who passed away last year, was the last living member of the pioneering Black physicians to serve Broward County. And something that will make all attorneys proud is, as a young doctor, Dr. Morris was recruited by Dr. Mizell to join his medical practice. Dr. Morris filed a lawsuit, which resulted in Black doctors being granted medical privileges at the previously all-white Broward General. This is only a small part of the great history of these great pioneering Black doctors. You'll hear much more about them tonight. Our community owes so much to these founding doctors and owes so much to all of our current doctors and other frontline medical personnel today. including and especially our current Black physicians. And I would like to extend my thanks to all of our current medical personnel in general, our Black medical personnel in particular, and give my respect to these great founders. And I thank you for inviting me here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Geller. I am sure the chief was making reference. I noticed he was going to mute to clarify. He was making reference to the members of the 17th in terms of the bench. I hear him sing
As
your
long as it doesn't affect our funding, Mayor Geller, that's all we're worried about here at the 17th. You know that. We're all one big family.
Yes, sir, Your Honor, Chief Judge.
He sings your praises all the time, and we appreciate the partnership with the county and your continued support of the courts and our programming. So thank you,
Mr. President.
Of course, you know, one of the things that we all have to admit is when things run smoothly, when there are no issues and there are no problems, there are some positions that remain unsung heroes in the administration of the courts. And this person absolutely embodies that kind of quiet efficiency. She just makes sure that everything runs smoothly and gets done without fanfare, without celebration. It just happens. But we know she's there. Our very own court administrator, Ms. Kathleen Pugh, please say a few words and welcome everyone.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, President Vaughn. Welcome to tonight's program celebrating Black History Month. Tonight, we proudly salute those pioneers in the Black medical community. Remember all of those who faced adversity and overcame many obstacles so that they could practice medicine. They paved the way for today's doctors. And tonight, we thank them and salute them for their contributions. At the same time, we also give thanks to those frontline medical professionals who are giving their all during this pandemic. You are all our heroes. So without further ado, this wonderful program is getting underway. Sit back and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Court Administrator, and welcome. Folks, last but not least, one of our committee members, one of the hardest working women in Fort Lauderdale, president of the TJ Reddick Bar Association, one of our partners in today's program. Please welcome President Ashley Gant of the TJ Reddick Bar Association. Madam President.
Thank you, Robert. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this celebration of legacy, ingenuity, courage, and heroism. My focus this year for Black History Month is Sankofa. And Sankofa is from the Akan, Twi, and Fanti languages of Ghana, and it means to go back and get. This means as we move forward on the path of progress and continue to work for our society to reflect fairness, justice, and equity, we must go back to bring the lessons our ancestors learned with us. We must remember that we are who we are because of them. We must never forget the tremendous obstacles they faced, threats against their lives, violence, racist laws, policies, and practices, and in many cases, death. Yet they endured for each of us. Today, we honor the doctors who faced them all and persevered. We pay tribute to their spirit of audacity to take up space and to claim their belonging, which we are all too familiar with because of the Honorable TJ Reddick and our founders. Thank you all for attending tonight and welcome.
Thank you, Madam President. There's no question, folks, that tonight we recognize those frontline heroes in the medical profession. But that said, we are members of the third branch of government. We are lawyers. And as such, we take a moment to recognize Black excellence in the legal profession. We will take a moment to recognize those amongst us whose heroism in putting themselves up for public service ought to be recognized. Those amongst us who have taken the time to fight through their own trials, fight through their own adversity, to serve not only as examples for each and every one of us, but as constitutional officers protecting our democracy. So let's take just a few seconds to recognize our own Black judges and magistrates. Allow me to introduce, in turn, Judge Florence Taylor Barner, Judge Tabitha Blackman, Judge Cal Evans, Judge Fabian Fanistock, Judge Phoebe Francois, Judge Keithan Frink, Judge Kenneth Gillespie, or BCBA liaison, Judge Stephanie Moon, Judge George Odom Jr., Judge Jackie Powell, our songstress for this evening's celebration, Judge Michael Robinson, the engine behind today's programming, Judge Elijah Williams, General Magistrate Eve Leventure, General Magistrate Alana Robinson. We thank you, we salute you, we appreciate you. Keep up the great work. Folks, we're going to keep the program moving, and I'm going to bring back to the screen President Ashley Gant of the T.J. Reddick Bar Association. President Gant.
Thank you, Robert. So tonight we are honoring the medical professionals, and we are going to highlight Provident Hospital. Provident Hospital was established in 1938 after a young Black man named John McBride was shot in the stomach by who many believe were local Klansmen as he walked along Hammond Road in North Fort Lauderdale. And at the time, Broward General Hospital in Fort Lauderdale refused to treat him. But Dr. Mizell advocated zealously for him to be treated in one of the hospitals, and was actually successful in being able to get him treated at Memorial Hospital in Broward County. And he actually performed the surgery and was able to save him. After that incident, Mr. McBride later passed away at a sanitarium, which was a facility where Black citizens of Broward County were able to receive treatment. And when he passed away at the sanitarium, Dr. Mizell was at the breaking point and knew that the hospital had to be founded. And so Dr. Mizell and Dr. Sistrunk, 3 months after the passing of Mr. McBride, founded Provident Hospital. And the hospital began with 15 beds and later grew to over 50 beds. And its first location was 1409 Northwest 6th Street. Dr. Sistrunk at the founding of Provident Hospital was the chief of staff, and Dr. Mizell was the medical director. As the hospital grew, the doctors provided specialized care to the Black citizens of Broward County until its closing. And it closed in 1964 due to integration. And that was after a long fight to keep it open by the Black medical establishment here in Broward County. Now you will be hearing from Ms. Jasmine Shirley via video, and Ms. Shirley was the Senior Vice President of the Community Health Services of North Broward Hospital, and she oversaw day-to-day community health services in a division of inclusive of primary care centers, home health, and hospice agencies. Ms. Shirley received her Master's of Science in Public Health, Epidemiology, and Administration. And she currently devotes her community service to Broward County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, where she served as a past president. Braulio, I'll turn it over to you for Ms. Shirley's video.
All right, hold on, let me get this started. Sorry, guys. Here we go. You should be able to.
Sure thing. We'll first start off with Dr. James Franklin Sistron, a very, very, very important man in our healthcare delivery systems here in the early days. He was actually the second physician to come to Broward County, but he's given the privilege and the honor of being the first because he was the one who stayed. He actually came through here in 2122, he and his wife from the Dunellen area. And he was actually by training, medical training, a surgeon. But as many physicians in the early days, especially the firsts, even though they may have been trained in a specialty, many of them worked as primary care physicians or family medicine physicians because communities, our community in particular, was very lacking in Black physicians. And so they had to do everything. And so Dr. Sistra came to Fort Lauderdale area with his family in the early 20s, 2021, 22, actually. And he began to see the people throughout Broward County as the one physician who stayed, Black physician who stayed. He made lots of house calls and delivered babies, even though he was a surgeon by training. In 1938 or 37, Dr. Von Delaney Mizell, who was actually from Broward County, his family moved to Broward County when he was a child. And then he returned after medical school. And both of these men, Dr. Sistron and Dr. Mizell, were Meharry medical student graduates from their medical school training. And he also, a surgeon, came back to Broward County, familiar with Broward County, and he and Dr. Sistron formed a partnership together whereby they were delivering care in the Broward County area. Two different kinds of personalities. Dr. Sistron, very mild-mannered, didn't want to cause a lot of trouble, was not activist oriented, just wanted to serve the people and provide quality care. Dr. Von Delaney Mizell, on the other hand, very, very activist in nature, very progressive in his thinking and visionary. And so the two of them came together and they decided to co-found together Provident Hospital in 1938. Provident Hospital started out on 1409 Sistrunk Boulevard, Northwest 6th Street. It's now called Sistrunk Boulevard, as a 15-bed hospital. Eventually, over the years until its closing in the mid to late 60s, got up to a 50-bed hospital. But they were known for quality care and for excellence in nursing. And as we all know, nurses are the one, in my opinion, are the backbone of any hospital and the delivery of care out of that hospital, because it's the nursing care that gives you the positive outcomes for the patients who are receiving the care as ordered by their physicians. But these doctors were very progressive and very visionary. With them also at the very beginning was another doctor, and he's not a physician, he was the first Black dentist, who was very instrumental in the co-founding and getting the funding together and what have you with others in the community, Ms. Aldridge and other women organizations in the community at that time, to get Provident Hospital up and running in actually late February, March of 1938. So that was Dr. James Linwood Bast. He's a dentist, the first Black dentist. So you had three of the original, what we call the Fabulous Five. Then there was Dr. Richard L. Brown. He was a pediatrician. So you had Dr. Sistron, Dr. Mizell, Dr. Bass, a dentist, and then Dr. Brown, a pediatrician, who came on board, and that provided then the care for children in that same hospital. And in there, so now you can look at them as developing their own multi-practice, but within their hospital setting and their offices as well. In 1949, my father, Dr. Calvin Hilton Shirley, came to Broward County. He was on his way actually to Key West in November of 1949 to visit and probably set up practice down in Key West, but had a stopover, accidental stopover in Broward County, had met the three of the doctors, but the two doctors, physicians and Dr. Bass, and they told him that when he finished his boards to come on back to Broward County at Provident and that they would give him a job. So he came back in November of 1949. My dad was obstetrician gynecologist. So now we have the two surgeons in Dr. Sistra, Dr. Mizell. We have the pediatrician, Dr. Brown, my dad, OBGYN. So we got a full camera, a full cadre of specialties that could really take care of and the practice of medicine here in the early days of Broward County and within Providence Hospital. One of the things that Providence was known for, as I said, was excellence in nursing care. So much so, all of its nurses, the original nurses in Broward County at Providence, were all registered nurses and BS degree prepared registered nurses. They were the best. I can give you such names as Cora Coleman, who was served as the director of nursing at one point. Miss Joanna Bradley, who was a very well-known midwife. Jeanette Shirley, my mother. Cora Eves Brainan, who was instrumental in as a nurse at Providence, as well as the first Black nurse to be at the Broward County Health Department. Later became a commissioner for North Broward Hospital District. So when I say nursing care was quality and excellence in nursing care at Providence, it was because of women like these women who ensured that the nursing care was delivered. There was the quality of quality nursing care. In particular, when I say progressive people and thinking in the early days, believe it or not, the first nursing education program in the whole of Broward County started at Providence Hospital. My mother, Jeanette Lindsay Shirley, developed the curriculum for the nursing education program. Their goal was to develop their own nursing and therefore expand their staff as the hospital grew and the patients grew and the beds began to grow by this time because Providence went from 15 beds to 25 beds to then 50 beds, that they would have the excellence in nurses even if they had to train them themselves. And so that nursing education program started out. Providence Hospital provided the clinical rotations for the nursing students, and Dillard High School, which also had a community program, a community school program at that time, had the educational component of the nursing program at Dillard High School. My mom taught that program beginning 1960, and that program is still in operation today. It was eventually taken over by the school system and put into the vocational programs and has been operating in the following settings: Sheridan Vocational, McFadder, and Atlantic Vocational since the 1960s. It was always a pleasure for me that when I saw the number of women, Black, white, Hispanic, you name it, who came through that program in the very beginning from the 1960 on, and they would say, "Your name, Jasmine Shirley, do you know a Miss Jeanette Shirley?" And I would say, "Yes, that was my mother." And they would tell me about that program and how she was the nurse's nurse and the best nursing instructor, and encourage them to move forward after they got their license as a practical nurse to go back to school, continue with their educational pursuits, get their bachelor's, get their master's, and go on to be the best nurses that anyone could have caring for them, even if they had to become the nurses who actually became the CEOs of hospitals. And it was a pleasure to meet those women as well. So Providence has a history of excellence. Providence has a history of progressive foresight and vision. And Providence was a major economic engine along Sistron Boulevard, then called 6th Street, for the Northwest Black community in particular. Everything revolved around the economic engine. Providence employed over 100 people, was one of the largest providers or largest employers on 6th Street. Businesses along that time, Sistron Boulevard, 6th Street was a vibrant business community at that time. And it's amazing the difficulties that we call them the Fabulous Five went through to actually get credentialed to the other hospitals here at that time. Broward General was called Broward General Hospital at that time here in Broward County. Difficulties that they had with getting credentialed at that time. That was a 22-year legal battle for those physicians. Thank God by 1959, when Dr. Morris came into town, Dr. William Morris, the newest. So we'll now add the sixth of, well, so not only do we have the Fabulous Five, but now we have the younger one coming in, Dr. Morris. And my hat goes off to Dr. Morris because when Dr. Morris came in 1959, and he was a young doctor and he brought his family with him. Yeah, I became on one of the staff positions at Providence Hospital, working with Dr. Mizell, and he, by training and medical profession, his specialty was family medicine. Very, very, very good doctor as well. And it was decided by the docs, by the physicians, that in order to pursue and to try to do what they needed to do to get this fight on, so that they could get the privileges that they needed to get at Broward General, and that their patients would have access to the resources that Broward General could also offer. And because, in those days, Broward County, as other areas throughout Florida and the nation, were segregated. And that was not unusual to have that kind of fight here in Broward County. Unfortunately, that led to a court battle to get their privileges. Unlike other areas in South Florida, Jackson Memorial Hospital did not go through court battles. The physicians, the Black physicians there, did not go through court battles. But in Broward County, that was the case, a 22-year court battle. Fortunately for Broward County, the decision was that Dr. Morris would resign his position at Providence and put his name on the suit against the Broward County Medical Association and Broward General Hospital at that time, who were creating the barriers that were not allowing them to get their privileges at the hospital on a catch-22 in essence. In order to get credentialed at Broward General, you had to be a member of the Broward County Medical Association. In order to be a member of the Broward County Medical Association, you had to be credentialed at Broward General Hospital. So it was a catch-22 for these physicians. And earlier, before Dr. Morris came in town, they had begun that battle as early as in their 40s, 49 to be exact. They had begun that battle. But years later, now it's 1959, and they're still going through that battle. And it was not until 1964 when the Civil Rights Act passed, and you could no longer discriminate based on race and other factors of a person. That battle became a victory for now the Fabulous Six. And Broward General pulled out of that particular lawsuit. And they had to, because Medicare was passed, and in order to keep that funding in place, one had to abide by the law. And certainly North Broward Hospital District was not going to be going against the law in any means, with any court battle. And luckily for the physicians at that particular time, and under the leadership and the sacrifice that Dr. Morris made, the judge and the courts actually sided with the physicians, and they were granted the ability to become members of not only the Broward County Medical Association, but also to get credentialed at the hospitals. And if nothing else, when I say Dr. Morris was a hero, because he made the ultimate sacrifice, coming in as a new physician. He relinquished his position at Providence. He worked for Dr. Mizell in Dr. Mizell's office as family medicine, which was ideal for Dr. Mizell, because Dr. Mizell, his office, Dr. Mizell was actually a surgeon, but he also did family medicine too, because like many of the doctors, they all had to treat everybody, regardless of what, the specialty was needed. And that worked out for Dr. Morris until he got his own office, and he too remained in Broward. And from that point forward, more and more physicians began to come into Broward County. I remember when Dr. Brown left, the pediatrician, Dr. Brown left, Dad was also doing children, pediatrics. So, when you deliver the babies, mommy brings the baby to Dad's office as well. And he didn't stop doing pediatric care until another Black pediatrician came into town, and that was Dr. Haywood, Arlene Haywood. And he began then to refer all of his children, his babies that he delivered, and he delivered well over 6,000 of them to Dr. Arlene Haywood, whose practice began to soar with referrals from Dad. So now that there was a pediatrician in town, he could refer that, and and get rid of the peds business out of his office. He did not stop his OB practice until another Black OB came into town that could take over his patients as well. It was very hard for Dad. And certain specialties were trying to even get physicians to cover for them so that they could actually take a break, a vacation, and have a life as well. So when the second OBGYN person came into town, Dad had now some resources where he could not only help get coverage, but could share the load of work in delivering babies throughout Broward County. So all of these doctors, whether, when I say progressive visionary men, they were very progressive and visionary men who made a way and paved a way for all of the other doctors who finally came into Broward County. And for that, we are so very grateful that they stayed. They developed a healthcare delivery system that was quality care, providing with the resources that they had at that time. And they hung in there until they were able to realize and get their privileges at other hospitals, and therefore expand their care and the opportunities for their patients and resources for their patients in the delivery of care throughout time. And for that, we are grateful.
Wow, what a wonderful video. Thank you so much for that interview, Braulio. Next, I will introduce Mr. Eugene Pettis, who I think doesn't need an introduction, but I'll go ahead and read my little paragraph. Mr. Pettis is a co-founder of Hallister, Pettis, and Schwam. He leads a trial practice representing an impressive list of corporate, public sector, and individual clients in civil trial matters. He has over 30 years of experience handling a range of complex cases for defendants and plaintiffs in the areas of medical malpractice, personal injury, commercial litigation, employment, and professional liability. Mr. Pettis attended the University of Florida, go Gators, where he received his bachelor's degree in political science in 1982 and his Juris Doctorate degree in 1985. In 2013, Mr. Pettis became the first African-American to serve as president of the Florida Bar, and he is a past president of the TJ Reddick Bar Association. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Pettis.
Thank you, Ms. Ashley. Good evening to all. I had the privilege of speaking with Jasmine a week or so ago, and even hearing the history that she just gave of Provident Hospital, it takes me back. Obviously, I'm a native of Fort Lauderdale. All 60 years of my life have been here, and I was born at Provident Hospital. But Jasmine and I go back a little further than that. I was birthed in this world by Dr. Shirley, her father. I embody what she was just saying, where he was an OBGYN, but he was my doctor for everything. I went to him for general medical care. If I had a cold, my mom took me to Dr. Shirley's office. And I remember the community back in the 60s growing up over on Fifth Avenue, and it was just a vibrant Black business community. And I've seen the transitions, and while there's been a lot of great advances, there was some strength in that community growing up as a kid. That the same community, everybody lived, the teachers, the doctors, the lawyers, the pastors, everybody, was there during that time because of segregation. But I really enjoyed Jasmine's summary of history. And what was most important is the viability of that, of the economic engine that was on 6th Street. My sisters tell me how mom was in the hospital for 2 days. I think I was a little delayed in coming. So finally I came on August 31st of 1960, and they couldn't come into the hospital. There was no air conditioning in Provident Hospital. So mom just helped me up to the screen window, and she showed my sisters me as a baby. But that's what it was. So I just wanted to give, at the invitation of Mr. Robinson, Judge Robinson, kind of personalizing this journey of Provident Hospital. It's there on 6th Street now. I was born where they're now building the new the LA Lee Branch YMCA on 6th Street. But there's a lot of history, a lot of our history that's rooted at that location. And I certainly am thankful for Dr. Shirley, who I continue to be a fan of through the remainder of his long life. I went to high school with Cedric Shirley, and Jasmine's youngest sister, Carmen, who's also a medical doctor. I saw her grow up, you know, as a little baby. So I'm very close to the Shirley family for good reason. Their father brought me into this world. So I wanted to give that bit of history. I'm looking forward to the rest of the program. Thank you.
Before we roll back into Ashley's introduction, I think you see for yourself the pulse of a people are in their history. The pulse of a community is in its history. Understanding how policy impacts a community, you must understand its history. And I think you will all agree with me when you hear Jean talk about that history, when you hear Judges Robinson talk about the history of the community, when you hear a Collins Foreman talk about the community, and you see that sparkle in their eye, you can't help but be inspired. You can't help but fall in love. You can't help but want to protect that history and that community. So learn it.
Yes.
Ashley.
So next we will have a quick little slideshow presentation of the pioneers that we've been speaking about. So on your screen, you see 3 different photos of Provident Hospital. And the first photo in the top left corner is the first building where Provident Hospital began, where they had the 15 beds. And as it grew eventually to 50 beds, it went to the middle facility, and then the last facility for Provident Hospital was the final picture. So first we'll talk about Dr. James Linwood Bass. And Dr. Bass was actually Broward County's first Black dentist. He came to Fort Lauderdale in 1938, and he had been in Sanford, Florida, so around Orlando prior to coming to Fort Lauderdale. And when he arrived in Broward County, there were 5 white dentists here, and they all refused to treat Black patients, or they treated them after hours if they so chose to. He was one of the founding members of the Provident Hospital, and when he opened his office, he treated both Black and white patients at his office that was located on the Northwest 4th Street and 5th Avenue. And Dr. Bass was also active in fighting for equality, but he did it a little different from Dr. Mizell, who we'll talk about a little later. Dr. Bass worked within the system. He retired in 1973, and in 1979, the city dedicated and named the park located at Northwest 19th Street after him, making Dr. Bass the first Black citizen to be so honored by the city. Our next doctor, who Ms. Shirley spoke about as being considered the first Black doctor, even though he was the second doctor, because the first doctor actually went on to Miami and Dr. Sistrunk stayed. Dr. James F. Sistrunk was the second doctor to practice in Broward County, but is honored as the first pioneer. He graduated from Meharry Medical College in 1919. And when he arrived in Broward, he originally opened an office on Northwest 5th Avenue and became the quintessential country doctor. So at that time, he wasn't actually permitted to practice in the hospital facilities that were here in Broward County. So that's why he opened his office, and he made a lot of house calls. And Dr. Sistrunk delivered over 5,000 babies here in Broward County. And he had an aura about him. He was known as an easygoing man, and he would often treat patients even if they could not afford him. And one thing Dr. Sistrunk always did, he was he was known for being able to recognize the babies that he birthed. So he would call them affectionately his cis-trunk babies. And that's pretty monumental considering he delivered 5,000 babies. So we honored Dr. James F. Sistrunk. The next doctor, I enjoy doing research on the hospital and every single doctor, but I will say I thoroughly enjoyed Dr. Von D. Mizell's story. Dr. Mizell he was spicy. He was just, I enjoyed his story so much. Dr. Mizell was a Broward County native. He was actually the first child of his parents' 14 children. He graduated from Morehouse College and from Meharry School of Medicine. He was vocal about his stance on segregation, and he was a huge proponent of civil rights. And earlier I mentioned Dr. Bass worked within the system. Well, Dr. Mizell's approach was to challenge the system head on. He was one of the founding members of the local NAACP chapter in 1945. And it was while I was researching him, I found this to be very interesting because his vocal stance against racial practices or racist, practices included fighting to end a police practice where they would randomly arrest Black citizens of Broward County and take them to work as field hands when they could not pay stiff fines. And because of his advocacy, it led him to being arrested 49 times within a 12-month period, and he was never convicted. So even though he was arrested over and over, he continued to fight for his community. He went on to run for Broward County School Board in 1948 for District 2, and he was the first Black person to run for Broward County School Board. Although he wasn't successful, he led the way for current school board members who we have like Dr. Osgood. In 1963, he gained notoriety because he gained notoriety on a national level because he was appointed to the White House Committee on Hospitals by President Kennedy. And Dr. Mizell has a long, rich history of advocating for the citizens of Broward County. And it was my pleasure to do research on all three of these doctors. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Robert.
And if you were wondering why the order is the way it is before I introduce the next two of our fabulous five, you could tell that when the invitation came to see who was going to do what doctors, and Ashley threatened to thumb wrestle me to make sure that she got Dr. Mizell, I had to back up because that passion was evident. Thank you, Ashley, for all of the research that you've done. Allow me to introduce Dr. Calvin H. Shirley. Dr. Calvin Shirley grew up in Pensacola and graduated from Florida A&M University. After serving as a Navy corpsman in the Pacific during World War II, he earned his medical degree from Boston College of Physicians and Surgeons. For nearly 50 years, Dr. Shirley treated patients, as you heard from Jasmine, as Broward's first Black OBGYN. He also served as the first Black staff physician at Broward Health Medical Center. Dr. Shirley is quoted to have said, "I could have gone on the other side of town, but I'm a poor doctor and I'm not ashamed of it." Let that sink in. We are all the richer for Dr. Shirley's dedication and commitment. The next doctor that I am honored to introduce is a name you've heard many times during this program, and it's Dr. William Alexander Morris. The same Dr. Morris that, again, Jasmine spoke so highly of in her video presentation. Dr. Morris faithfully served the Broward County community as a family medicine physician in his medical practice, which was located at the same location on Sistrunk Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale for 50 years. Dr. Morris graduated from Florida A&M University and Meharry School of Medicine. He was described as quiet, brilliant, and committed to the Black community in Fort Lauderdale. Dr. Morris passed away on May 13, 2020. You hear Jasmine Shirley told you he was the baby of the group, the one who sacrificed so much at the end for that lawsuit. He was the sixth and last survivor of the original fabulous 6 Black physicians to serve here in Broward County. Folks, this is why we did the program. A rousing hand of applause for these tremendous pioneers, the inspiration.
Wonderful.
And I think, Gene, I think it's safe to say you may have started slow, but you took off like a rocket ship, my brother. You took off like a rocket ship. Okay. We'll now move into another celebration and acknowledgement, video presentation and montage.
Welcome, Dr. D'Souza. What special challenges exist for Black doctors to overcome in South Florida and in the nation?
I think when you talk about Black physicians in South Florida, I think it also pertains to in all the whole nation. And I like to compare doctors like we talk about the CEOs of corporations, we talk about the entrepreneurs who are mostly in areas where we're the minorities. So that means you need to be active in your medical communities. You have to be the societies, all the committee programs that are available, because in these organizations, for instance, like the Broward County Medical Association, then liaison with the our politicians in Florida. They're able to make policies and things that affect everyone. And if we are not at that table, then we will get neglected and our issues will not be addressed.
Can you describe medical care disparities and disparate treatment of Blacks in our healthcare system?
Now, especially with COVID, I think people are really noticing that there is such a thing as disparity among Black patients. You see how COVID has been disproportionately affecting us. We don't think it's all socioeconomic, because if you look in my field, the maternal mortality rate of Black moms is 4 times as much as in any other ethnic group. And it goes across socioeconomic lines. You realize that 62% of people in the United States who have received the vaccine are white. And that number is just very disturbing, since we are the ones who are affected most. So if you look at the breakdown of ethnic groups, the white non-Hispanics, like I said, are 62%. Hispanics are 8.9%. Asian non-Hispanic, 5.5%. Blacks, 5.9%. And the others are 14%. So if you took all the other ethnic groups together, bundled them together, that would be that there's only 34% that are vaccinated compared to 62%.
Welcome, Dr. Hamilton. Can you describe a little bit the legacies of Dr. Mizell, Shirley, Sistrunk, and Morris and their impact on Broward County and the healthcare system here?
Dr. Mizell was an activist who very active in the NAACP, and he had a hospital on Sistrunk Boulevard. The hospital was there because Black physicians were not admitted to Broward General Medical Center. Now, Dr. Sistrunk was the eldest of all of those physicians, and he, according to this is oral history from Dr. Mizell, he told me that when Dr. Sistrunk first came to Fort Lauderdale, he was not practicing, he was waiting tables as a waiter down on a little restaurant in Northwest Fort Lauderdale. Dr. Shirley came afterwards, and he was a longtime practitioner who played a pivotal role in the desegregation hospitals. And the same as Dr. Morris, who was my undergrad classmate at Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida. They were pioneers, so to speak, and they had great camaraderie, great practices, and they were steady and played pivotal roles in the Black community.
Welcome, Dr. Shirley. What challenges exist for Black doctors to come to meet in South Florida or even in the nation? What challenges are there?
There are several challenges. One of the biggest challenges right now is trying to close the healthcare disparities that exist between people of color and other people. Encouraging patients to just get primary care and get access to primary care is a big challenge. And that's one of the reasons why I chose a primary care specialty, so that I could be a part of that movement to close that gap.
How can doctors and other medical professionals convince the Black community about the dangers of COVID and the efficacy and safety of the vaccine?
The statistics of COVID and mortality amongst African Americans is very high. One, we don't have access to primary care. We don't trust science. We've been experimented on in the past. We have to educate our people that, problems that existed in the 50s and 60s in regards to experimentation, all of those things have changed dramatically over the last 50 years. And so we as physicians have to lead by example in regards to getting the vaccine ourselves, and then educating our patients that the vaccines are safe, that the research is sound, and encouraging them to do the same so that we can decrease the curve.
Can you talk a little bit about the legacies of Doctors Mizell, your father, Dr. Shirley Sistrunk, Morris, and Brown, and the impact on Broward County and the healthcare system here?
What a great history we have. Our first pioneer physician, Dr. Sistrunk, literally paved the way, him and Dr. Mizell starting Providence Hospital. That was the very first opportunity for people of color here in our county to have access to public health care. Dr. Brown, being our pediatrician, was able to give care to our children. My father joined the group as an OB and brought over 6,000 births to our county successfully. They did pave the way. They paved the way to have physicians of color be able to gain privileges on staff at Broward General at the time. And that opened the door, not just for people of color, but other peoples.
Welcome, Dr. Alexis. What special challenges exist for Black doctors in South Florida and in the nation?
I'm not sure that the challenges we face in South Florida are necessarily unique. I think our challenges are probably pretty national. And I think that the most pressing ones, of course, are, first of all, just being able to have the opportunities to begin the path and complete the path to becoming a physician. But in terms of actually the practice of medicine, I think it's really being able to reach our communities and being able to actually effectively treat not only the patient who's in front of you, but hopefully make an impact in the community to improve on some of the healthcare disparities that we know exist and ravage.
What kind of advice could you pass on to Black youth if they're interested in following your career path?
First off, while I would say, of course, it's important for them to work hard and focus on academic achievement, I think it's also important to take the time to state that the culture of medical schools and medical school admissions is changing. And it really, the be all and end all is not really academics anymore. It's not your scores on standardized testing. It's really who you are as a person. What have you displayed that would lead an interviewer for medical school admission, for example, to accept that this is someone who actually has been walking the walk. And so being, well-rounded for people who are interested in medical careers, I, for one, volunteered at hospitals and in research labs and did those sorts of things.
Welcome, Dr. Bass. Could you please describe the legacies of Doctors Vaughn Mizell, Calvin Shirley, James Sistrunk, William Morris, and Richard Brown, as well as their impact on Broward County and its healthcare system?
When I came to practice in Fort Lauderdale in 1969, all of those doctors were here. Dr. Hamilton actually is still here and still has 2 practices open. He's still practicing now. He's had a big impact on the healthcare in Broward County. He was a surgeon at the time, but he stopped doing surgery now, but he was a surgeon. So he joined Dr. Mizell. Dr. Mizell, of course, was a surgeon, and they had a lot of impact. Delivered a lot of babies. Dr. Shirley delivered many, many babies. Dr. Sistrunk delivered babies. And everybody in Fort Lauderdale knew these doctors. They've been very important in the history of medical care.
I think it is safe to say, well, let me make 2 observations. First, is anybody else thinking that if you have the name Shirley, you're prohibited from doing anything except going into the medical profession? And number 2, with all of these opportunities that we have found ourselves with during this COVID period, I just found my first regret. How many of you are thinking to yourself, man, I wish I could stand around that cocktail table with any one of these folks and talk for the next 2 hours, just talk. And I know we have some special guests here from Broward College. I think we have to give them a rain check. We have to make it happen when we're all vaccinated and back in a room together and, put these young folks with these stalwarts, with these heroes. Broward County, let's give these fantastic medical professions a big, rousing thank you and acknowledgement.
Fantastic. Wonderful.
Dr. Alexis, Dr. Bass, Dr. D'Souza, Dr. Hamilton, Dr. Shirley, on behalf of the entire community and on behalf of all of those medical professionals that you represent, we salute you. We may have a special treat for you, and Doctor, it's Judge Robinson. I don't know if you go between both, doctor, if this were.
I appreciate it. Thank you. We're going to have a special treat. Jasmine is on, and I know she loves talking, but we just had a video. I don't know if she wants to have a brief comment. Jasmine Shirley.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much. I just want to say thank you on behalf of my family in particular and all of the other physicians that you have honored and their families who might not be on this program. We are all family still. And we love the legacies that our parents have left for Broward County and continue to be in our hearts, even though they're not with us in physically, but they're with us in spirit. And so we just want to say thank you. Thank you very much for honoring them and all of the heroes that are there working today in this field, which is very difficult. But thank you so very much for giving them the honor and respect that they so deserve.
Appreciate it. Deborah Mizell is on. Deborah Mizell.
Thank you so very much. First of all, this is an excellent program. Thank you. I even learned a lot. Thank you, Jasmine. I just want to say that I was influenced to go into the medical field because of making rounds with my father. I'm sure Jazz probably did some of the same things. So I'm a retired nurse at this point. But if I could just share one thing that he told me growing up, and it continues to ring very deeply in my heart, especially when I hear people talk about how he was such a rabble-rouser, and he was. He stood for what he thought was right in the community, and he was not going to sit down and shut up until it was rectified. And the one thing that he would often say is, do the right thing, even if it hurts. Thank you for your time.
Beautiful. Thank you for appearing. Zelene Morris, the widow of Dr. Morris. Zelene, are you?
Hi, yes, I just wanted to say thank you just for doing this program. My mom, I believe, is still on. She's in Florida, obviously. I'm in Atlanta. But I just thank you guys so much for putting on this program, and it's been wonderful to watch. I've been texting with my family, sending them, I've been recording videos on my phone and sending it to everybody. So I can't wait till the recording is finished so that I can just send it to more people. And again, thank you guys so much.
I was told, Chris, from a friend of hers that she's technologically, I guess, deficient in knowing how to hit mute buttons and that sort of thing. So you need to give her a call. All right, Chris?
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to jump in to interrupt, and I may regret this, but I have to do it because you see what Judge Robinson is trying to do. What he's trying to do is roll right into his portion without the introduction, and that is not going to happen today.
No, we're going to do that. We don't need introduction.
So Chief, I need your protection because
no,
today.
Don't worry about it. I appreciate it, Robert.
Ladies and gentlemen,
don't worry about it. I don't need it. What I want to do,
I have a speech.
We held them too long. Don't worry about it.
Folks, let me introduce.
What I want to tell the folk. What I want to tell the folk is this. I was born at Providence Hospital. My doctor was not Shirley, it was Dr. Sistrunk. You heard it. Dr. Sistrunk had 5,000 babies. Shirley had 6,000. I don't know how I missed Jean. I don't know why when Dr. Sistrunk slapped me, why he didn't look over and slap Jean. But I now know.
You would have been in the hospital 5 years, man.
Huh?
You'd have been in the hospital for 5 years.
And Doctor, don't put my age out there like that. I knew. And Elijah, were you born in Providence? Judge Williams?
No, Dr. Sistrunk delivered me. This is Chuck Morton as well. No one put me up to the window. I guess I wasn't as good looking of a baby as Eugene was. And Robert, what you can do is you can mute Judge Robinson and then you can introduce him after that. Okay.
He can't because he does not want any of his motions denied. Anyway.
But Michael, I was born in West Broward Hospital, which was the other hospital which only took African American patients. It was by a Jewish physician named Dr. Topol, who was one of the very.
Wow. I remember he was my doctor too after that.
Well, believe it or not, they could not get on staff privileges at Broward General as well, Topol and Goldberg. That's why they started their own hospital.
Thank you.
That is absolutely amazing. I appreciate it. I knew the doctors. I met obviously Sistrunk. I appreciate everybody that's here, and I'm going to be very brief. Despite facing seemingly insurmountable odds in their day-to-day struggle to practice medicine in the Jim Crow South, these fantastic Black doctors wage battles on 3 fronts. And I call them the Magnificent Seven. And y'all remember that movie, but these guys were gunslingers for medical care and treatment for our community. They fought to provide and successfully provided excellent medical care and treatment to an ever increasing Black population in Broward County. As fathers, they provided very well for their families. And even though Morris made that sacrifice, he got on his feet and had a successful practice and provided for their families. And they also kept them safe because back then, Walter Clark and Bob Clark were on a mission to eliminate Black males. As community leaders, they led the war against racism, discrimination, and criminal and social injustice. For all of their vision, efforts, compassion, hard work, the Magnificent Seven will always remain indelibly etched in the annals of time. They still have a profound impact on our lives our healthcare system, and Broward County's Black community. We sincerely thank the families of these great pioneer doctors. We also honor all frontline workers. We didn't have time to do what we wanted to do in October, as Judge Tudor said. We were putting things together, and we were going to do first responders and deal with essential workers like teachers and laborers and provide PPE for the hospitals. But I was told not to do that because they have their own supply chains, and they did not want us to bring masks, N95s and all to their hospitals because they have that vertical responsibility and financial responsibility. I want to thank our team who continue to raise the bar of service and hard work. Thanks to all of the Black judges for your support and encouragement, and sometimes the rod behind the shed. Thanks to the Chief Judge who's always supported, and Chief Judge Tudor.
Barrage is the word I use frequently there, Judge Robinson.
Well, yeah, we're gonna leave that alone. But Jack Tudor has been a very fervent supporter of diversity, and we talk all the time regarding having more Black judges, and we're going to make that happen. Court Administrator Kathleen Pugh, thank you for your service, all you do. Brenda Foreman, I pray for you all the time. That's a tough job. Braulio Rosa, the Executive Director, if it were not for him, we would not have this program. I appreciate the combining, if you will, of the presidents, Vaughn and Gant with the double T. Thank you for your service. Thank you for everything that you've done. This is a great program. It's educational. I learned a lot. I never heard of Brown and Green. Never heard of them. I talked to Jasmine, our local historian. I did work at the African American Research Library and Culture Center. I tried to find whatever we can. Don't have photos of those guys, but we got what we could to make this program an educational one, and hopefully you were blessed because of it. I'll leave you with this. This is a prominent refrain from our hero and icon, Justice Thurgood Marshall. He said, "I wish I could say that racism and prejudice were only distant memories. We must dissent from the indifference. We must dissent from the apathy. We must dissent from the fear, the hatred, and the mistrust. We must dissent because America can do better, because America has no other choice but to do better." Thank you, everybody, for coming out, and I hope you were blessed. You are the village and foundation upon which this nation is built. I wish you Godspeed. I want everybody to get vaccinated, and please tell your people to get vaccinated. Your grandmothers, your mothers, your great-grandmothers, all those people who just have this hesitancy. I would rather get vaccinated than face, I know if I got that virus, I'm dead, and I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave Mary alone, okay? So tell your relatives and loved ones to get vaccinated, and all of the Black folk and white folk, Hispanics that are on, brown and Black people, please also support our HBCU. Thank you for tonight. God bless you. And when you see me, just nod at me. Just wave at me. You ain't got to say nothing. Just nod at me. Appreciate it. Everyone, thank you, Braulio, and your staff. Thank you for the board.
The links for all of the videos are going to be posted on the Broward County Bar website. Please go and check them out. Take a look at them. Thank you to the BCBA staff, Braulio, Lauren, for putting those together and editing them. And I think the judge said it all. Be inspired.